Good afternoon, everybody. I'll give a few minutes here to let everybody kind of start trickling in. I know we just fired it up and we just got everything started. So, Ben, we're going to give everyone here about a minute or two to trickle in because I still have 11:59. So, I always say early bird gets the worm, but
Yep,
sometimes early bird is a little too early here.
yep. Right. The worms aren't up just yet either. So
Not quite. And I don't think with this projected weather that we're going to get that we're going to be seeing them anytime soon.
very true. Very true.
Awesome. We'll wrap up a little bit of housekeeping here, and then we will do some introductions. And then I personally am really excited to dive into today's topic. It's been one that I've been getting quite a few questions on, and I think Ben can attest. I'm very fired up about this topic today. I really think it's going to be a good time, and I think we're going to have a lot of
Yeah, I think I got the pre-webinar webinar about the
fun.
webinar, so I'm quite excited for you guys to experience some of that as well. So we can then get together on like the fourth Tuesday of every month and just make sure we're all on the same page moving forward. So yeah, it should be really good for agents to like and just to be aware where the industry is going, some opportunities that are available to you as an agent. There's a lot of stuff and it's very easy to get overwhelmed. I think this is a really good time just to break down this part specifically, be
Yep.
well versed in it, and move forward. So yeah, very excited for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff, Ben. So I've got 2 o'clock on the dot here, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. My name is Will Pierce. For those of you that are not familiar with me, I'm our Associate Director of Regional Sales here at Senior Marketing Specialist, and I'm joined by our lovely.
My name is Benjamin Lavis. I am a regional sales team lead here at Senior Marketing Specialist.
Awesome. And we're here today to talk through with you guys on the integrated plans opportunity, what it is, why it's so important, and I think, kind of in short, why agents should care about this being such a focus in the industry. And if you're looking at me like I'm a chicken with my head cut off and you're like, what in the world are these integrated plans and what do I do about it? Then this is perfect for you. As
You're in the
always,
right
today,
spot.
yes, you're right where you need to be, I assure you. Today is going to be recorded as always. So if you have to hop off, we know how OEP gets. We know the phones don't stop ringing. If anything that I've heard so far about this OEP is true, phones are still
True.
ringing off the hook. So it will be recorded if you do have to hop off and leave. We will be monitoring the question box as we go today. So please don't hesitate to fire your questions in there as we go. If I don't know or if Ben doesn't know off the top of our heads, we will assuredly find the people that do, get you the answer, and get back in touch with you guys after the webinar. Sound good?
100%.
Perfect. So first things first, when we talk about these integrated plans, there's 2 kind of core categories and 2 acronyms that I think you guys have probably started seeing as we rolled into 2026 plans and benefits and probably started wondering what in the heck all of this is.
It's been funny to see. I think they've even been kind of highlighted or found on some of the quoting that agents have been doing. They might have started seeing these in their respective areas and being like, yo, what is this specifically? I'm only familiar with like DSNP, and that's kind of where I jump off the board is what all of these differences look like between the two.
Mhm.
How do you even pronounce Heidi and Fighty, all those
Yeah.
different aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. So those of you that are in states that have begun this process, you started seeing this pop up when 2026 benefit designs came out. And this kind of was a follow-up from that quarterly election expiring and kind of a phase 1 and a step 1 of where all of this is heading. So the questions that I always get started with from agents is, okay, well, what's Heidi? What's Fighty? What's the difference? And like, what does it all mean? Why does it matter? So your Heidi plans are your highly integrated dual eligible special needs plans.
Mhm.
And that's going to be where most of their Medicaid and Medicare benefits are aligned and integrated. What that aligned and integrated means is that their MCO is going to be the same on the back end. That is, if their Medicaid is administered by Centene in their state, then that's going to need to be aligned with a Centene integrated plan. Now, biggest difference you'll see between the Heidi and the Fighty is going to be that they have to have the Medicaid contracts on both of them to include coverage for the stuff listed there on the screen. Now, the difference is Heidi plans have to have either LTSS, behavioral health, or both. They can kind of choose.
Yep.
whereas your FIDE plans, your fully integrated, have to in bold and italics there, cover both LTSS and behavioral health.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and where you'll hear from us in a little bit about the opportunity that come from these two breakdowns is that alignment, where who they have their Medicaid accessibility and their qualifications through, and who is managing that specifically, who is then taking care of their health insurance on the Medicare side of things. When those two are disaligned, one, what we've experienced in the past, and really the whole kind of what's the point? Why are we introducing Heidi? Why are we introducing FIDE? You know, it sounds like we're starting almost like a fairy tale story with some of these types of names. Why are these being introduced? And the main goal is really the end consumer. As many things as this is getting pieced together, integrating both of these sides help for streamlined processes, a faster turnaround time, a better understanding of the benefits. I mean, at the end of the day, how confusing I mean, Will and I are having these conversations, an agent is also trying to have these conversations. Think about the end user who is actually being subjected to some of these, you know, interesting qualifications, interesting requirements. Hey, who is that through? What does MCO even stand for? There's a lot that also weighs on the shoulders of the beneficiary who's trying to even use these benefits. And so when it comes down to it all, why do we have these other acronyms? I mean, our industry doesn't need any additional acronyms as it is, but why do we have them? It's really to streamline the processes between who is taking care of what, make it more efficient. That way, the end user, the beneficiary, is having a better time managing their own care, working with a managed care organization, and receiving better care at the end of the day.
Yeah, Ben, I think you hit the nail on the head. The intended outcome for this is the quality of care for the consumer and their access to their care as well. When we look at what's valuable to a Medicare Advantage plan and how they're built, star ratings, of course, have a big impact on all of that. And a big part of the star ratings is the consumer experience within all of that. So some of the intention behind this alignment that they're doing is for quality and access to care benefits for the consumers at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, this is, I think, probably the portion that I'm super excited about, and we're going to kind of jump around between the bullet points, and it's all going to be, I assure you, in the end, one cohesive conversation here. Or that's my intended goal, at least. I can never promise that, I suppose, but that bullet point smack in the middle is, I think, where I want to kick us off, Ben, if that works for you.
Yeah, I may have put together the PowerPoint, but if you want to derail that, by all means, buddy, I support that.
Awesome. Well, when we look at what's the opportunity with these SNP plans, the Heidi and the FIDE and the integration and all of that, I think the really important thing to be mindful of is we want to be where the industry is heading with that. When we have, over the last two AEPs, talked until my ears bled, at least, about the disruptions and about the markets changing and why the market's changing and what does this mean for the consumer, the agent, the carriers, everything involved is kind of a holistic picture within that. But what can you as an agent do to best position yourself going forward to continue to survive these ongoing changes? And that's being where the industry is headed. Now, the special needs industry and the dual industry, especially, the intended goal is for all 50 states to be aligned by, Ben, I believe the year's 2030.
Correct. That's what I have. I think there are I wanted to say 18 states that are currently on board. There's a handful that kind of break it down with different carriers. There was an old chart that I had actually around this time last year that showcased the different states, and maybe I can kind of dig that up and we can get that out to you guys as a follow-up from this webinar to show where we were. But I wanted to, the focus point that Will's really making here is that, hey, it's going to be everywhere. And so the earlier you can jump on, this bandwagon and become familiar, the better you state your claim as an expert in this field. I think Will makes a great point about being where the industry is headed. We've proven over these last two APs that an agent's role in this industry is integral, like it's required for this industry. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, especially if we add more aspects to different particulars in the industry itself, including the special needs market.
Yeah, absolutely. And within the value of the brokers now that our clients are experiencing, and I think you guys have known that for years, but it's really the last couple of years taken a big turn in that direction, just with the complexities there. I've always been a big believer that the dual market and the special needs market is a wildly underserved portion of our population. It's one of those ones where you can really ingrain yourself in the community, and they can be massive areas of referral generation for agents.
It's super interesting, and maybe this was, I may have to have myself fact checked on this, but when I was first getting into the industry as a whole, I think it was outlined that there was like 72% of folks that were on Medicare Advantage or in that area actually had potential opportunity to be on a type of special needs plan instead of just a traditional MA. And I think even out of all of that were available, only like 18% of them actually were. And so then it almost points the question of who's the one who doesn't know about it? Is it the beneficiary who maybe doesn't know what questions to ask, what is available to them? As someone who's just recently went through the car buying process, I didn't even know some of the packages you could add to your car until the salesperson across from me started, hey, do you want the emblem blacked out? Do you want the cold weather package? And shoot, had I known the weather that was coming, I may have opted for it. But as a consumer, I didn't know what questions to ask. And I think we find ourselves in that space specifically here. There's a lot of folks that are already trying to manage a lot on their own. Part of why they maybe need some additional plans that have additional benefits to help them through certain cases or certain situations, let alone trying to understand, hey, am I getting the most out of what I could be getting? That's a hypothetical. They may not have the time nor the energy to really ask.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When we look at kind of opportunities within the DSNP community, I always think that the biggest way to do that is an old quote that I've read, I don't know how many times over the last couple of weeks. Ben's heard it multiple times, but that the riches are in the niches, right? As we continue to see the integration move forward and the Heidi and the Fighty, and that really start to streamline and become a big focus, when you're in that niche and you really understand what your consumer is talking about when they say, oh, I talked to my caseworker and they said I'm moving into this category of Medicaid, if you can in your head then start to connect those dots on what that means for their care and what that means for their benefits, I really think you'll see a massive jump forward in the way that those clients feel about you as their broker and the opportunities and the doors that that's going to open up.
I think long gone are the days where it's almost like the road that we showcase maybe in our Medicare 101s in our appointments. It's less inclined just to be, hey, do you want a med sup? Hey, do you want Medicare Advantage? Like you're truly being called to be an advisor. And I know a lot of people, one that are attending today, that'll probably also watch this in the future that I personally work with, their whole goal is to be an advisor to the individual or the beneficiary through and through. And that doesn't stop with just health-based questions. It's you understand their family, their daughters and sons going through schooling. You learn so much about them. You are an advisor on a personal level. My dad's a veterinarian, and he says half the time that he spends in the appointment is not even focused on the dog. A lot of the time, it's the person that's taking care of the dog. And so I think our agents find ourselves in a similar case. And if you truly want to be able to say you do that and actually do that, I think you have to start recognizing these flags that are getting raised and being able to be comfortable with the questions that follow suit.
Yep, absolutely. And that kind of segues next into what I think is the most exciting opportunity if I was a broker here with this truly is year-round selling. Yeah. I know you guys are sitting there, well, yeah, so DSNP has always been because of the quarterly election. And to that, I'd put a bit of an asterisk that on the old quarterly election setup, it kind of ended in AEP. They had that same 10-15 to 12-7 window that every other one of our consumers did. The way that the monthly SEP reads is if it's outside of AEP, that monthly election is still valid for them to align those plans, which truly means that this is year-round selling and a monthly opportunity for consumers to get where they need to be.
I think it's also, it's so funny that you mentioned the quarterly election. I think it's the number one thing that people remembered about DSNP as a whole is that, oh, well, I can move them around quarterly. But I think it's also one of the first things we always hear is to maybe why someone is not involved currently in the special needs market. That is, oh, well, someone else could just move them away from me. They're not a client for life. If they have a quarterly election, what's going to keep them from answering the phone call and trying to move to something shiny or better? And I think I don't mean to steal thunder. I took one out of Will's book and I said, let's go for the middle bullet point instead of starting at the top here. And just it's interesting. I think a lot of the time people view this market specifically, and I agree with Will that the riches are in the niches, and going through and looking at a lot of this, people have assumed because there's confusion surrounding this market because of that quarterly election that they would get moved because they got something dangled in front of them, even if it wasn't even appropriate or even accurate. I think that was a lot of what I remembered when working with certain agents and just having my experience. It was like, well, I helped them and we put them on the best plan, and then the next quarter started and they got hit with a phone call and immediately they were moved away. And you know who their next phone call was after that? Me again, trying to see if I can fix all of the problems that they're now having. So I think, and I think that's starting to be dispelled not only by how you go about managing and handling this clientele, but also in the industry as a whole. I mean, Will mentioned it, the removal of that quarterly SEP, that's no longer an aspect. So it's almost, yes, you have a year-round selling capability, but the whole process to use that is where we talked about originally, the MCO. If they're not currently aligned with who is handling their Medicaid side and their Medicare side, that's when they have the opportunity to get aligned together. There's a whole bunch of a process and all that, and how it goes about finding who is their Medicaid kind of representative carrier. There are some websites that are available, and carriers make that known a lot of the time through links of their portals, their live chats, and working with the carriers make that a lot easier. So it's like, yes, it's year round, but I think it's a lot harder to steal that clientele via that SEP. In fact, it's there for the client at the end of the day. And through all of this, focusing on education and making sure they're understanding of, hey, what are we even trying to do with all of this? If you have questions, come to me. Being more involved and being that advisor instead of just being someone who can scoop up some additional folks because of a quarterly election.
Yeah, Ben, you mentioned a great point there on the alignment of their MCO and kind of why that adds a secondary layer to this, and why I think in my opinion, and I think you shared as well, it makes this client a lot stickier than a lot of agents are used to feeling back on traditional duals, because changing that MCO allotment to align to another one varies within state. I can speak to my home state here in Iowa and talking with some of my carrier reps here that are in the area. If you in Iowa want to change your MCO, you can do that once a year. You get an election to do so. Outside of that election, that consumer would have to essentially call the state and request a change and say that they are not getting the best treatment from that MCO to make that request. So it is an extra step for the consumer to do that. And that's why I think I am a big believer that these are going to be very sticky clients going forward. Yes, monthly election to change. Monthly election to change, though, into where they align based on their Medicaid provider. So it's not a monthly free-for-all. If their MCO is Centene, they can align monthly in a Centene integrated plan. That's the SEP.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's available monthly, but it's kind of a use it and lose it for the year. I think is it only available per year, or if they happen to change their MCO throughout the year, would they have that ability to align again?
You would have that ability to align again, has been my understanding, but that goes back to the state rules at play based upon who is administering their Medicaid benefits.
Gotcha.
We actually have a great comment in the chat. That's where the confusion's been. I don't know who administers their Medicaid benefits. Absolutely correct. That is kind of, I think, hurdle one or step one within all of this. And a lot of consumers will tell you, oh, I don't know who my Medicaid provider is. They should be able to reach out to their state office and get a copy of their awards letter for that year, and that awards letter should have their administrator on it, and that should tell you the name. Now, the names you may not be 100% familiar with because it files by state. So I've been using the example of Centene. Centene is WellCare as we know it on the Medicare side. On the
Mhm.
Medicaid side, they're under the Centene umbrella.
Mhm.
So sometimes the names are going to vary just ever so slightly. And so if you ever have questions on that, feel free to give us a call. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, and another good question that comes in here is just, what's the advantage of a client having someone who is HIDE or FIDE versus a regular DSNP? At the end of the day, it all comes down to the alignment of the MCO, that access and ease of access to care, and having it kind of be one focused. I think, and Will, you may put me to rest on this one because of your familial backgrounds and everything, but like going to someone who just does your taxes versus offers financial advisement on multiple avenues, I think kind of helps it put it into a different different understanding of like, do you want someone that you're going to go to who understands your goals, your capabilities, and where you're at in life, or do you just want someone who is going to take $300 and say, yeah, your taxes are done, don't worry, the IRS is not coming.
Wait, you only
So
pay $300 to have your taxes done? Oh man, no, kidding. Great question. What is the MCO? MCO is the Managed Care Organization. That's the abbreviation within the industry for their Medicaid benefits providers. So your MCO is your Managed Care Organization, and that's going to be who your Medicaid administrator is.
and the alignment of that is so, and we'll, using the example Will offered earlier, like if Centene was taking care of someone's Medicaid, to use that alignment, they would need to not be on a WellCare or Centene Medicare DSNP plan. And that would be then, okay, let me use this election period to align with my MCO that would then be taking care of Medicaid and Medicare. That's how that SEP would work.
Yep, Ben and I talked about this top bullet point a little bit off the bat in the other slide, but I think this is another objection that I get is, oh, well, it's not in my state yet. What does it really matter? How does this impact me at the moment? And you're right, right now, bold and italics, it doesn't. But when we look at, like we talked about earlier, with where the market's heading, 2030 is less than 4 years away, guys. I blinked and AEP was AEP. I mean, it goes by in the blink of an eye. OEP isn't much slower. And so when we look at the full plan is 50 states by 2030 by CMS, we're going to see chunks of that happen at a time. This is the only way they're going to get there realistically. It's not going to be one at a time. It's going to be 5 states 1 year, 8 1 year. I mean, they're just going to chunk this out. And so may not be in your state yet, but it will be. The faster you get comfortable knowing what it is, knowing how it works, and knowing what it means for the consumer, the faster you're going to be able to jump in and dive in head first when that opportunity comes into your state. And the expert and the resource that you're going to be viewed as by that community is going to do tenfold wonders for your business.
And a part that I was thinking about maybe until you started talking about that, Will, so, and I appreciate the trigger of the mindset working and the brain kind of working into overtime there, is if you are also leading the pack in your state of trying to understand this, making your presence known to carrier representatives, that you're also trying to understand this a lot too. Like, who do you think they're going to lean on? Or maybe, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this is coming down the pipeline, or hey, we had this influx coming here. Would you not prefer to set yourself apart from maybe all of the other agents who are avoiding it until it's a necessary evil? I think there's a lot to be said on the folks that adopted to Medicare Advantage at the very beginning of a lot of this as a whole, who were on the forefront of that and who kind of reap what they sow to some degree. Like they put the time in and put the extra effort in, and they saw the benefit, the fruit of their labors. I think that's maybe not to the same degree, but I think there is a version of that happening now. And I think you could
Yeah.
really set yourself aside from everyone else and put yourself almost like on a pedestal, especially for carriers. Like that was another angle I hadn't previously thought about, was having those connections with the carrier specifically, and them understanding, hey, this person knows what they're talking about. We want to put them, put beneficiaries in connections with them specifically too.
Yep, I think that's the great point there is when you look at why this is so valuable to learn now, carriers want that business to be aligned. If they're a
True.
Medicaid provider in that state, they want the alignment and they want the business because it's a twofold benefit within them is they get to have that full access to beneficiary care and provide that top-down approach that CMS is wanting. They're going to want to give leads, give booth opportunities, give retail opportunities to the agents that are comfortable with that and that they know they've got a depth of that relationship with. Really, the last big objection that I think I always get from agents, and this is one we've been preaching to the congregation on for a long time, is the cross sell opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes, you are right. On the whole, individuals that are on Medicaid are not opportunities for cross sell aside from final expense. So I absolutely understand that that could be a detractor in a business model to maybe that's a big focus of yours is to have holistic packages of coverage with clients. And I'm a big believer in that as well. I know Ben is. We can sidebar that topic for later because that'd be another long-winded conversation from me on that. But you're absolutely correct. My counterpoint to that would be go back to the riches are in the niches. Maybe it's not you as, primary principal agent in the office that needs to be well versed and well depth on this topic. Maybe it's someone else in your office. Maybe it's someone on your team. You can train them to kind of be, this is the branch of our consumers that they serve.
I think it's interesting if you view your agency as a whole and have extensions off of that. Even if DSNP's not a part of your whole, it very much so is part of the nodes that connects to it. And that way you don't ever have to turn someone away who maybe needs to benefit from that. Will, you mentioned it earlier, how deeply ingrained this market type is within the community and how close they are with one another, whether that's at certain events or venues or food banks, any of these styles that they frequent. They get to know each other very, very well, and they want the best for one another as well. And I think a lot of agents, especially those that are tuning in today, could fill in that slot for those folks of, oh, well, you need to go sit with this agent because they took good care of me. I know they're going to take good care of you. I think that's something that even if you're looking at it as a lack of quote unquote cross selling, I think you view it as a zoom out 30,000 foot view down and seen as a whole. Don't put yourself in a possibility where you have to tell no to someone because you're not comfortable or familiar. Let's leave that in 2025. Let's move
Yeah.
forward from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff, Ben. I don't see any new questions here in the chat. So Ben and I will hang on and discuss a couple more things for a few more minutes here, and then we will let everybody return back to their OEP. Ben, what would you say would be step one for an agent that's wanting to dive into the integrated opportunity in their states?
Yeah, great question. Step one is find out if your state is part of that program or just not. And how do you go about doing that? Reach out to us. Reach out to the folks at Senior Marketing Specialist. Reach out to me, Will, Clayton, anyone that you may be familiar with, and say, hey, part of my goal for 2026 is to be an expert in this space and really see what that looks like. And part of that is going to be educating, making sure you have the content from this webinar and additional supporting aspects. From that moving forward, it's really just almost kind of getting out of your comfort zone and finding folks and getting to where these types of markets are available and are to be serviced. We want to be there, be in physically there many times. There's a Medicare Cafe episode that we talked a lot about the DSNP market and how to market to them specifically. And to wrap that up, and I would highly suggest you go over and watch that one as well, is you have to be there at the end of the day. And so establish what it looks like to in your 2026 goals, in your budgeting, in your marketing efforts, make that presence felt not only internally for you as an agency, but to those that would be serviced by that. Again, but at the end of the day, and I think the softball toss he was giving me was just to reach out to us. Give us a holler, 1-800-689-2800. Shoot us an email at any of our email addresses, honestly, agentsupport@seniormarket or smsteam.net. That would be a fine one. They'd get it forwarded over to who it needs to be taken care of. I had a question for you too, Will. I think one of the things on the cross-selling side, and one of the things that I've always heard is if they're if someone is maybe not in a position to afford a certain monthly payment, the idea that they're for sure potentially not in a position to afford the detriments of maybe not having a smaller monthly payment. And so I didn't know if you had thoughts or opinions on what that would maybe look like for this market specifically as well.
I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat yourself. I froze everything for a brief second when I changed slides, so if you don't mind reteeing that back up in, yes, I will address.
100%, buddy. We've heard, and the idea of cross-selling, and specifically cross-selling to this market, we've heard in cases where it's like if someone can't afford the additional monthly payment for these other additional products, the idea behind them, maybe the likelihood is that they can't afford to not have these smaller monthly payments because it's going to be such a larger amount. I didn't know if you had maybe ideas or what your thoughts and opinions are when tackling this market specifically for that type of idea.
Yeah, I think absolutely these individuals need to be discussed with final expense, at least at a bare minimum. And frankly, from the standpoint of, this is going to sound maybe a little bit strong, but they also don't want their family or their children worrying about how are we going to pay for mom's funeral. I know that's a little bit morbid and that's a little bit dark, but small benefit burial policies or cremation policies can absolutely serve a huge need for this consumer base. Making sure you're being mindful of what actually is comfortable within their budget, because you don't want any chargebacks, you don't want any cancellations or anything like that. But the same way that you would approach your standard Medicare Advantage consumer or your Medicare supplement consumer of wanting to make sure you've got those gaps covered and you do a holistic needs analysis, your D-SNP members are no different in the sense that they need that holistic needs analysis. It doesn't just stop at, well, you've got full Medicaid, you've got Medicare, everything is good for you, because the reality is there are still things outside of that that are not covered within either of those programs, and you need to at least make sure you're doing a due diligence to bring up that topic to them.
Don't let them go a winter storm without the cold weather package in their car. Make sure you're asking those questions. And
Dan's
Judy
really
mentioned in here,
not having the cold weather package,
yeah,
which I can tell.
It's weighing on me pretty heavy. It's for sure. And Judy, I'll for sure let you know. I've got your number or whatnot. I'll take care of you on the Texas front. And again, if anyone else that it's tuning in after the fact has questions about what this looks like, we welcome them. We want them. That means that you have interest. I think Will has mentioned it, and I'll continue to kind of say it till I'm blue in the face. Is there's a huge opportunity, let alone in the industry and the market as a whole. I mean, there was 2.8 million people that had to lose their coverage going into 2026. I guarantee you not every single one of them had something pieced together, let alone the amount of folks that may have been put on something that is not aligned or is not going to be the most beneficial for them moving forward. There's a lot of opportunity. I think we have some videos, if we don't already, talking about OEP opportunities here as a whole. So I'd kind of give that as a shout, and then extend that energy and that momentum into how can I continue to do this in quarter 2, quarter 3. And I think this is a great part of that 3-pronged approach that you can do during that time period.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got nothing else to add on that topic, folks. I'm going to wrap us up here. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a like and a subscribe, and give us a call at 800-689-2800 with any questions.
Thanks, guys.